Hey, I'm Jeff from The Thoughtful Real Estate Entrepreneur. Thanks for checking out this video. And in this video, I'm going to show you and talk to you and teach you about a concept I like to call double financing. What is double financing? Well, double financing is a strategy that combines seller financing with other forms of financing, often private financing, such that when you buy a property, you actually receive money back. So you're not taking money out of your pocket, you're getting money at the closing table when you buy a property. In order to do this, I'm going to switch over to my handy little iPad whiteboard, and I'm going to draw you out this model. So the first thing I want to do is I want to give you a quick orientation to how I'm going to draw a couple things out. When I draw a model for property, it looks like this. And I want you to think of this like a glass of water. The very rim of the glass of water is the full capacity of that glass of water, obviously, right? So let's think of this property as the top rim, the top of the glass of water being the full value of the property. Now, if I were to pour water into a glass, where does it go? Not a trick question. It goes to the bottom first. So I want you to think of the water as being kind of like the debt. So I'm going to pour debt into a property and it's going to start at the bottom. And I pour more debt into the property and it gets a little higher. And I pour more debt into the property and it gets a little higher. So we would call this extra space here, the part of the glass that's just filled with air, not yet filled with water. We would call this, in the context of our real estate drawing, we would call this equity. So we would have, here's our debt, here's the full value. That leaves us with our equity. Okay, so let's keep that model in mind. And I'm going to get to work showing you the concept of double financing. Now, double financing is going to require a couple different things. First of all, you have to have an existing property with equity. And it's going to need some cash flow ideally as well, but let's just keep it simple for the sake of our example. You're going to need an existing property that you already own that has equity. And you're going to need a couple skills here too. Of course, you're going to need the skill of find, negotiate, and close a seller financing deal, which luckily I can help you with. And you're also going to need another form of financing. And that might be something like a private money relationship. It might be something like a hard money lender. Any of those would really work. Okay, so let's draw some diagrams. So let's first of all talk about the property that you already own. Okay, so let's just draw it over here. And let's say everybody's numbers and everybody's markets are different, but I'm just going to make something up here that should maybe cover a lot of us. Let's call this $500,000 property. So this is your existing property, and let's call it a triplex. So you have an existing triplex, and let's say in that triplex you have $300,000 loan, which means then that your equity is $200,000, right? Okay. So a new acquisition comes along. This is where you're starting. A new acquisition comes along and you start looking at it and you think, I like this. Let's just call it a house. I'll keep it real nice and simple. So it's just a house, and you are thinking about the analysis of this house, and you think to yourself, okay, I can buy this house possibly with seller financing. It seems like these folks that are selling it are good candidates for seller financing. It feels like we've got the relationship oriented rapport and some of those elements. I'm hearing them mention some of the clues that tend to lead to seller financing. And I like that. I like that a lot. And so let's say that this house is like $225,000. All right. So you start talking to the seller and you start working towards a seller financing proposal. And what you end up proposing is a deal where you would give them $25,000 down. $200,000 on a note, and you would make payments to them over time. So what that would look like here would be your 25,000 down becomes your equity, really, your down payment there. And you have a nice round $200,000 of seller financing loan. Now, not just seller financing. You may have heard me talk before about something I like to call supercharged seller financing. Now, supercharged seller financing is a seller financing loan that has additional provisions that are really additional flexibilities. And these flexibilities are not insignificant. Let's just say we can't get into all of the details of them here, but a supercharged seller financing loan allows you to do a lot of things that you wouldn't otherwise be able to do with it. Now, one of the things about supercharged seller financing is it allows you to change the property that secures a particular loan. So in this case, this loan is secured by this property. But with supercharged seller financing, you don't necessarily have to have this loan secured by this property forever. That could change over time. Or, as in the strategy of double financing, it could change right from day one. So let's say you are working with the seller now, and you have secured their approval on this deal that I just mentioned. So purchase price 225, down 25, note 200, interest rate, whatever, 5%. Doesn't matter too much for this exact example. So you've actually just secured a really, really great loan here. Now, what is double financing really all about? Double financing is saying this house right here is an attractive piece of collateral to multiple possible lenders. It's an attractive piece of collateral to this seller. Obviously, it's an attractive piece of collateral to the seller because they just agreed to loan you money secured by this property. So they feel comfortable with this collateral. But if you were to look at this property and say, if I didn't have seller financing, what would I do? Maybe I'd go get a bank loan, heaven forbid. Maybe I'd go to a hard money lender and get a loan and begin whatever I plan to do to this house, and then eventually refinance it later. But the point is, there are multiple people, multiple parties, multiple entities who look at this piece of collateral and say, yeah, I would loan against that. So now for this step, this is the important step of double financing. We have to understand for a second, what are some of the motivations that a seller has for doing seller financing? Well, a few things. So one big one, let's go back here for a sec. Capital gains tax deferral. If this was a rental property for this seller, they've owned it for a long time, chances are when they sell it, there's going to be a tax bill. They might not be real excited about the tax bill, and they might not also be excited about the idea of simply using a 1031 exchange to sell this property and buy another one, because that's like saying, oh, I think I'll trade this responsibility for this responsibility. And there are a lot of people who get to the point in their life and they say, I want to trade this responsibility for no responsibility. And so capital gains tax deferral without needing a 1031 exchange. Another thing that people who own rental properties in the first place tend to like is income. If they sell the property and they don't buy a replacement property, there goes the income. Now they're looking to figure out how to generate income. For some of them, they're not really sure what to do with cash. I hear this a lot. That might sound surprising to you, but in reality, you're talking to the right people. Someone who's owned a rental property for 20 years, if they're 68 years old, they might be in a pretty good spot in their life. And it's not like they need a lot of cash. Maybe their own home is already paid off. And so they don't really know what to do with it anyway. And that feels maybe a little stressful or like a project. So double financing. Here's the crux of the double financing move. We first secure this deal with them. Purchase agreement, an addendum that outlines the seller financing. This is now in contract. As we proceed through our escrow period, we begin to have a conversation with the seller about the idea of securing their loan with a different piece of property from day one. So you might already be talking with them, hopefully, about some of the principles of supercharged seller financing and giving you the flexibility to give them new collateral throughout the period of the loan. But now you actually could even substitute the collateral before you even close. So now this is where our triplex comes back in. We start to look at this and say, well, I have a $200,000 loan, and I would absolutely want to understand what the payments are on this $200,000 loan and what the cash flow was on my triplex. But we're going to just, for the simple sake of this example, assume that we have the right amount of equity here to support this note. We have the right amount of cash flow to make the payments on this note. And so we look at this and we say, wow, what if on day one, what if at the closing table, the title company who's closing this does not record a deed of trust in first position here? What if they record a deed of trust in second position here instead? Okay, so instead of them, they're recording the same deed of trust, the same for the same, securing the same promissory note. They're just using a different piece of real estate that we already own as collateral. So what would that now make this look like? Well, let me get my little eraser. We'll clean this thing up a little bit and we'll take a look at what this would look like. So now we would have this triplex that we already own with a $300,000 loan there. We would now have our new seller loan here at $200,000. So what would we have? We would have a triplex that now has equity of nothing. And you might think to yourself, well, equity of nothing, that doesn't sound very good. But what do we also have? We also now have a property we're closing on over here that is otherwise completely free and clear. We could close on this deal in this exact way and own this property free and clear the day after closing. So what if instead of waiting till the day after closing, what if at the same time we were to go before closing and find our private money lender who is going to make us a new loan secured by this property that we're buying? It wouldn't even have to be an aggressive loan. It could be a low LTV loan. Let's just call this loan, $150,000. $150,000 against 225 is a very reasonable loan to value kind of amount overall. And so now you have, what just happened here? You have bought a property, you have tapped the equity in your triplex, which otherwise, my friends, I'm sure you realize would be difficult to tap otherwise. It's hard to just walk into a bank and say, hey, can I get 100% LTV loan on my triplex? And they're going to tell you, no, not even close. But you have used this as the collateral for your new acquisition, and you have gotten a new loan against your new purchase of $150,000. So what has happened here? You needed $25,000 to buy this property in the first place, right? You had a down payment of $25,000, but you just got a new $150,000 loan against this property. So you've got much more new money coming in than you had going out in order to do this deal. And you walk out of closing with $125,000 in cash because you have tapped your own equity in this property through a negotiation, a relationship-based negotiation that said, hey, let's make your initial collateral this property, this triplex already. Now, you might ask yourself, why would a seller be willing to be in second position on another property? Because these are their goals. These are their goals. They're not primarily concerned with their lien position. They're not primarily concerned with where their which property secures their loan. They're primarily concerned with making sure that this plan does not trigger a big capital gains tax burden. They're primarily concerned with making sure that they continue to have income. They're primarily concerned with not getting a big lump sum of cash and wondering what in the heck to do with it. So these are their primary considerations. And if you have already negotiated with them for the right to move, to substitute their collateral, and effectively, this is sort of the slang, but to move their debt from one property to another, but to substitute the security that secures the loan, to provide a new deed of trust on a new property instead of the original one. If you've already negotiated that, what's the difference to them if you do that move at closing versus closing it and coming back to them 3 days later and say, great, now we're going to swap the collateral out for your loan? It's the same process, but just more efficient. And that is the concept of double financing. So there you have a simple example and a simple demonstration of the concept of double financing. You negotiate a great acquisition for a piece of real estate with seller financing that would be an attractive piece of collateral to loan against for not only that seller, but for somebody else as well. You give the seller different initial collateral, and you get a new loan on your new acquisition. And all of that creates a lot more cash coming into this picture than going out. And now you've bought a property and received cash back at closing. And as you can see, not a few dollars of cash back, a significant amount of cash back at closing. What is double financing really? Ultimately, double financing is a relationship-based strategy for negotiating for the seller of the property you're buying now to tap into the equity of a property that you already own, because that equity and that cash flow in the property you already own is really valuable, but through conventional means is hard to get at. And so now we're taking the seller negotiation, the seller who's got all the right motivations and concerns and priorities, and we're giving them exactly what they want in a way that also helps us tremendously by releasing that bit of equity. So thank you for checking out this video. I hope this is thought-provoking for you. I hope it's stimulating. I hope you like the whiteboard experience. I hope you can track my drawings and my handwriting. Please like this video. Please subscribe to our channel. We talk here about thoughtful approaches, which are both left brain and right brain. We tend to talk a lot about the relationship-based right brain stuff, the rapport building, the connection, word choice, communication, and this relationship capital. But at the same time, we also have to be in the back of our heads, if not outwardly with the seller, we have to be working through the deal structuring concepts. And it's really, the magic happens when the left and the right brain come together in a beautiful, seamless way that just feels absolutely seamless to the seller, but it's also very strategic from our real estate brain deal structuring sides of things. So subscribe to this channel. We'll catch a lot more of these things, both right brain and left brain, and then where they come together in the negotiation. I'll see you in the next video.